Well, hello, Internet. The most common request I get is to do a Java programming tutorial in which I teach the entire language, or the core Java language, in one video. Today I'm going to do that, so let's get into it. Alright, so here I am in Eclipse, and if you don't know how to install Eclipse, in the description underneath the video, I provide a video that shows you how to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we are going to create 3 classes. A class is a blueprint for creating objects. What we do in object-oriented programming is we model real-world projects or objects in code. The very first one's going to be called animal. Now I know this is going to be a little bit weird for what I'm going to do here, but just bear with me now. I'm also going to come in here and also create another one, and this is going to be a dog. And finish. And then the final one I'm going to create for you cat lovers is a cat. So, new, come over here, and class, come over here, and type cat. That is all we need to do. Don't need to worry about anything else, and we're just going to click on finish. Okay, so there's our classes. By this being public, that basically means anyone can access it. Class, that's what it is. A class, like I said, blueprint for creating real-world objects. If you want to have a comment inside of Java, this is a single-line comment. If you want to have a multi-line comment, you put a star inside of here, and you can just type whatever you want to type, and there you go. Over and over and over again. So, single-line, multi-line. If you want to import libraries, which you will do all of the time in Java, you can either go Java util scanner, which accepts user input, or you can go and import the entire library by going Java util.star. There you are. Now we're going to create what is called a field, and I'm just going to start off with a complicated one. Okay, so public means that this is available to anyone else. Static means that this number is going to be shared by every animal object that is created. Final means that this is a constant and it can't be changed. Double means that this is a variable type that allows you to enter decimal places. And it's common to have finals defined with all uppercase letters. 1.6180. There you are. Now variables or fields can start off with either a letter or an underscore or a $sign. But more than likely you're going to start them all off with letters. I'm going to define now a private field. And by putting private on there, that basically means that it can be accessed by other methods in the class, and that's it. It's a very good idea to have all of your fields labeled as private. That way you can keep people from going in there and willy-nilly changing them. A string is just a string of characters, and I'm going to go through all the different data types that are inside of Java. Private, an int, is just an integer that can have a value of -2 to the power of 31 to 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. So, pretty big number. Well, what I'm doing here is I'm defining an animal. So it has a name. Every animal that I create is going to have a name. These are attributes. Fields are attributes for whatever we are defining. Another common attribute would be weight. Another thing that would be common is Boolean, which can have the value of true or false, is whether it has a owner or not. And we're going to define everything as not having an owner by default. These guys up here, name and weight, don't have values when they start off, and that's perfectly fine. Private byte would be an age, and it can have a value of -28 to 127. And we're not going to give that a value either. And every class inside of Java is going to start off with this brace right here and then end with this brace right there. Another variable type is known as a long, which is massive. It goes from -2 to the power of 63 to 2 to the power of 63. Okay, so big. And let's just say that we want to have a unique ID for all of our animals, and that's going to be a big number, and it's going to be a long. Let's say, just to be goofy, that this thing or this animal is going to have a favorite character. Characters are unsigned ints that represent UTF-16 codes for characters, just single characters. That's all you can ever put in there. Private double. Talked about already. Say we want to monitor the speed. It is a number with a decimal place, and it's a 64-bit number. And then you can have floats, which I never use, and it is a 32-bit number with decimals. And the reason I don't use them is because they are not very accurate. I don't use floats, I use doubles. But whenever I want something to be very accurate, I use what's called a big decimal. Now what I'm going to do is create a protected data type. And by marking it as protected, that just means that this value can only be accessed by other code in the package. So this guy right here, anything that's in this package right there. I'm also, just to make this crazy. Going to make it a static integer, and this is going to be number of animals. Now, remember I said a static shares the same value. Every single animal object is going to share the same value for a number of animals. And basically, you want to mark any variable or function static if it doesn't make sense for an object to have that thing on its own. So, for example, it wouldn't make sense for a dog to know the total number of animal objects created. If it doesn't make sense for the real world, it doesn't make sense here. Make it static. And we're going to give that default value of 0. A scanner is going to allow us to accept user input from the keyboard. And I'm going to just call this user input. And I'm creating a scanner object. And you normally do it this way, equals new scanner. And then here, by putting system in, you're saying we want to get data from the keyboard. Now, anytime an animal object is created, you need a function that is called a constructor to be executed. Here, I'm just going to right click. I'm going to go source, and I'm going to come down here, and then generate constructor. There it is. And here I'm just going to put it after user input. And I've decided that I don't necessarily want this to be created with all of these different data types. So I'm just uncheck that instead. And there you go. There is your constructor. Super calls whatever the superclass was for this animal to be executed. And in this situation, animal is the superclass for dog and cat. And how you know they are a superclass is dog extends animal. Okay, so this is now a subclass of the type animal. And of course, cat is going to extend animal as well. And this is what we call inheritance, because every single field and every single method that is in animal is going to be available to these subclasses dog and cat, since it extends it. And that's inheritance. Now, I don't want to call the super for this because I have no reason to. And whenever we enter the animal constructor, that means we just created a new animal. So I'm going to say number of animals needs to be increased by 1. So I'm going to put 2 pluses on there. And that would just be exactly the same as if I typed in number of animals equals number of animals plus 1. It's just shorthand notation. Now let's say that I want to come in here and add some things. So equal to 5 plus 1. This is how we add. Exactly the same as you would think. And if you want to print out, shorthand inside of Eclipse is type sysout, hold down Control, hit space. You're going to use system out print line anytime you want to print something to the screen. And here we're going to go 5 plus 1 equals. This is how you put information inside of here. And since we're going to be creating a string here, you can add 2 different values together inside of print line by putting a plus. And then I want to put sum of numbers. And there we go, and that's going to print that out on a screen. And I can go and create a whole bunch more of these. And then we can do subtraction as well. Put a negative sign in there, and I can type in diff. And then I put a subtraction here, and then I could type in diff. Also come in here and do multiplication, and that's going to be a star or an asterisk or whatever, another star, and mult. Division, / and div. And then finally we have modulus, which returns the remainder of a division, and that's a %. And let's change this to 3 so we get a result here, and mod. Now if we want to execute these guys, what we have to do is I'm just going to type in main right here, Control space. This is where our code is going to be executed, or this is going to be whenever we call for our program to run, this is going to be the function that is called first. Again, you understand these public static void main string arguments. If you run this on the command line, you're going to be able to provide arguments or values that are going to be stored inside of this array. And I'll get more into what arrays are later. They're just basically boxes. Okay, so if I want to execute this, I'm going to go animal, and I'm just going to call this the animal is equal to, and I'm going to create a new animal object, and I just go like that. And this guy right here is actually our constructor. And now I can come up here and click on this and go animal. Okay, so there is everything that we just did. And you can see here modulus, that's division by 3, and the division by 3 of 5 is going to give you a remainder of 2. So there's the math functions. All right, come in here and create a couple more things. I've already said before, if you want to print out stuff to the screen, just go sys out, Control space, there you go. But here I want to demonstrate print and how it differs. Basically, we want to have the user enter a name for our animal. Now, the way that print line and print differ is there's no new line or a line break, you know, where they hit enter and go to the next line. Okay, so if we want that with print, we just put it in there, but it's better just to use print line because it saves you some time. Now, an if statement is going to perform the actions that are between braces if a certain condition is reached. So we're going to go user input, and we're going to say has next line. That's basically saying, did they enter a string, a series of characters? And that is a method right there. And if they did, then we are going to execute everything that lies between here and down here. And I'm going to come up here and make this uppercase. There you go. And there it is. Now, what do we want to do to accept that input? Basically, has next line basically just means, like I said, that they entered some string into the keyboard. And if it comes back as if that is true, it's going to return true, which is going to cause this to execute. This is a way for us to refer to the object that is being created because there's no other way to do that. So this is a reference to the object that was created, this guy right down here, okay? So that we can execute the proper things. And we're going to go set name, and we're going to get the user input that they just entered. And to do that, you go next line. Now, depending upon the type of data you are accepting, you're going to use a different value for here and a different value for here. This just returns true if they entered the right data type. This actually gets the data that they entered. And here you can see in Eclipse, it gave me a little error message saying, hey, you haven't created set name yet. Real easy to do that. It's a good idea to have both setters and getter files so that we can access these variables that are up here that are marked as private, all these guys. And how you do that inside of Eclipse is you right click and you go in here to source and you come over here and you say generate getters and setters. You're going to see what they look like. Come over here, say select all. We're not going to have a setter and a getter for number of animals because the constructor handles that. Can't change favorite number. User input's user input, doesn't have anything to do with the object, and that's also why it's static. See these little S's here? But every animal does have an age, a favorite character, or at least in my world it does, an owner, height, name, speed, unique ID, and weight. Alright, so we're going to create those. And each one of those is going to be public. Boom! And you can see right here what they do. This is going to return whatever the value for name is, and this is going to allow you to set the value for name. And you can see there, this is being used, again, in reference to the object. But let's get back up in here. The different values that are available, remember this is going to return true if they enter the right data type. This is for strings whenever we use line. If we are instead receiving integers, it's going to be changed to an int, like that. If we're going to be receiving floats, you're just going to type in float, so it's easy to remember. If it's going to return a double, boolean, and then finally, byte. So these guys return true if it's the right data type. And this guy down here, this is really simple. It's going to be next int, next float, next double, and I think you get the picture. So those are the different ways to return data and make sure you get the right data types. And I'm having a copy of this, everything in this program, in the description under the video. Now what I'm going to do is a couple little weird things just so I can demonstrate all the other things in Java. I'm going to go set favorite color, and I'm going to do some weird stuff in there. And this is how you call function, of course. Set unique ID and call that as well. But in this situation, I'm going to get rid of that, even though it's going to cause an error, because I'm going to create my own version of set unique ID in what's called method overloading, which just means that there's different types of attributes or data that you can send through here. So if you have multiple different versions of this function, however, the attributes or the data it accepts are different, you can do that. You can have the same function name and it doesn't cause any problem. So let's go down inside of unique ID and create that guy. And here you can see it right here to method overload. All you do, use the same name, boom, and you just change the attribute. You can never have the same attributes inside of there, or at least the data types can't be the same. So you couldn't go in here and type in long, unique ID. Well, as you just saw, the data types have to be different for this to work. So I'm going to come in here to the original. I'm going to say unique ID set to +, this unique ID. You can also see these things pop up over here, so you don't have to memorize everything. And I did that just because I'm going to do something a little bit weird here. Here they don't get the unique ID sent to them, so what we're going to do is we're going to generate a random number. So I'm going to create a long, and it's going to have a minimum number, which is going to be equal to 1. And I'm going to create another one called max number, and we're going to generate a random number. Can't use commas, by the way, from 1 to 1,000,000. Actually, we could put 1,000,000 inside of an int, but I'm just doing it this way. Now to generate a random number and store it in the unique ID for our animal, you're going to type in minimum number is equal to, and don't try to memorize all this stuff, especially if you're new. Long, but I doubt new people hung around for this. Math, random, you just call math random number. It's going to generate a series of numbers between 0 and 1, so that's how it's going to generate all of them. And then you're going to multiply that times, put multiple braces inside of there, the max number that you want to generate minus the minimum number you want to generate, and then come inside of there, and then go +1. And always put a semicolon at the very, very end of every one of your statements, if I didn't say that already. Now you can see this guy right here, long. Well, the reason why we have a long there is we're casting. Whenever we do all this stuff over here, math random generates or returns a double. Remember? Gives you a number between 0 and 1, a bunch of fractions. So if I want that to be converted into a long, I need to tell it I want it to be a long. And that is how we call, or that is what we call casting. You want to cast to a byte, you just do exactly the same thing. You want to cast to an int, you do exactly the same thing. If you want to cast to a long, you just saw that. Okay, so you get the point there as well. And these data types are what are called primitives. You either have primitive data types or you have objects. If you want to convert from a primitive to a string, just go string number. You can type anything there. That's just a name. Is equal to. If you want to convert this long into a string, you just type in long to string and then pass in whatever you want converted. Here, it's going to be maximum number. Remember, strings are just series of characters and a string is an object. Likewise, you could type in byte to string and then pass in whatever you want converted into a byte. And then once again, integer, like that, float with an uppercase, or double with an uppercase. All those things. And then if you want to convert from a string into a primitive, you can do that as well. So let's say we want to take int, number string is its name. You would go integer dot parse int. And then you put inside of here whatever you want to be converted into an int. Likewise, double, float, long, byte, boolean, all those different things. And the only thing you're going to change is this is going to be the uppercase version of whatever data type you want to convert from into an integer. Okay, so these things match, integer, integer, there you go. And then you're going to also change this thing, except this is going to remain int, or you can have long, or you can have float, or you can have whatever. But this time it's an int. And in this situation, come up here, and at the end of this, print out